What's up, family? Thanks for tuning in. I appreciate you logging on today. This is the Locker Room Beef podcast, and we are brought to you by, we actually don't have a sponsor yet. I'm still working on that. Go check us out on lockerroombeef.com. That's where you can find all of our stuff. We have our LRB column, which I recommend you subscribe to. We come out with a couple articles a week typically, and we try to keep them short for you so you don't have to be spastic, and you can go check those out. Also, go look at our social media. We have Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and SoundCloud. So if you're on any of those, go hit us with a follow. Today, my infamous guest is Brian, otherwise known as Brain. Brian and I talk about a lot. Mostly, I would say, college football. We talk about Heisman candidates, LiAngelo Ball, and what he's been up to. And also Bledsoe going to the Bucks. We mentioned other things as well, so just listen throughout. Like I said, thanks for tuning in. If you're really digging what you're hearing, go shoot us a 5-star review. 5-star, 5-star, 5-star. Otherwise, keep your Twitter fingers to yourself and enjoy the pod. What's up, family? This is the Locker Room Beef podcast, and today I am joined by a wonderful guest. He is the almighty, the all-knowing Brain. Brian, how are you?
I'm doing well. How about yourself? Thanks for having me back on.
No problem. After some reviews, we decided that we can have you back on.
Appreciate it. Brought back from the fire.
A lot of interesting stuff been going on in sports since we last had a pod, so I definitely want to get that going. We also have a couple of new segments to introduce. One I'm particularly excited about, and then some other ones that we've done before, which of course you gotta have the reliable. So we'll go ahead and start with the reliable. L of the week doesn't need much of an introduction. It's just who we believe are teams or players that kind of been taking an L this past week. So how about you? What's your first L of the week?
My good and true Florida Gators taking a big L of the week. Taking a big L of probably the last month, actually. I don't think it could get any worse for the University of Florida football program.
Yeah, it's been pretty rough to watch them, I'm not going to lie. Honestly, the whole table of Florida football is like it completely switched. I mean, Miami is top dog. USF was doing really well for a while. UCF has been very good. And FSU and UF have been pitiful.
We're the jokes of the state of Florida right now. And no, I don't think anyone could have seen that one coming.
Definitely not. What are your thoughts on the whole Jim McElwain experience and how that went down?
Jim McElwain, I loved him when they brought him in. I thought it was a really good idea just to kind of have like a outsider bring him in. He has some pretty good luck in his former domain. So, they thought that he could come in and fix the offense because we had Will Muschamp, who ran an incredible defense. I mean, no matter who you were, we always felt like we were in the game because of Will Muschamp's defense. It was just the offense that didn't produce. So we were expecting Jim McElwain coming in and kept the same defensive core of coaches. So you would think that they'd keep the same, rhythm, same flow, and be a consistently top defense in the NCAA. And you think Jim McElwain would raise the level of the offense, but that just hasn't happened over the 3 years. It just has always been us depending on our defense, which is just not what you can do. You can't have, another team having 25 minutes of possession and running your defense into the ground and expect them to come out every single possession and stop them. I mean, you're going to get tired. It's just the way of the game. And then these death threats that he brought up in the Monday press conference before the Georgia week to kind of give himself some kind of like cushion to try and protect his job or something, which is just incredible that he tried to bring those up and use it as an excuse. And then going into the Georgia game, now I was expecting a big L to Georgia. I'm a pretty realistic sports fan, and I know where my team is good and when my team is bad. I know Florida's bad, but I wasn't expecting for them to be so demoralized the entire game. Like, it took until the end of the fourth quarter for them to score the touchdown, and that was in garbage time.
I was honestly surprised that they let McElwain go because I know that he has not been doing well and that this is seems like the hottest seat, that he's ever been in. But at the same time, like, how many coaches has Florida gone through in the past 5 years? And McElwain, at least in my opinion, you can tell me if you agree, has been the best. Not like he's A1 by any means, but I don't know what replacement you bring in, and maybe that's something I have for you. What replacement do you realistically think you could bring in that would do a better job first day than McElwain?
Well, a few different names. Scott Frost is number one from UCF.
Shout out.
I mean, if you put a program like Florida in front of Scott Frost's face and be like, look, you can make something special here, that's pretty tempting. I mean, he's just coaching at UCF. I'm not knocking UCF, but when you're talking about tier of programs, Florida's up there.
I agree. I think Florida's a top 10 program, and not only just because of the history, but also because of recruiting. I mean, it's no joke and no secret that really some of the best talents come from Florida and Georgia as far as high school athletes go, and that's in football and basketball, but football especially. And I find Florida to be, I'm an FSU fan, but I'm being honest. I think Florida's a top 10 place to coach. Like, if I could coach anywhere, that would be on my high list. So
absolutely. And you got to think that, I mean, Florida's been taking some serious L's this season, but anytime that you flash this kind of a program and this kind of an opportunity in front of an opportunistic coach, they're going to want to come, because that's just where they can make their history known. Some other options would be Chip Kelly, trying to bring him out of retirement, out of the dregs, wherever he is. Someone's been throwing around the name of Charlie Strong, which I love Charlie Strong. He brought the Gators 2 national championships as a defensive coordinator, but that's a problem. He's a defensive coordinator. He's a defensive coach. We need an offensive coach, because we have one of the best recruiting classes and one of the best quarterbacks coming in this season. Next season for the recruiting class. And they need offense. They need someone that's going to get a gunslinger and let him throw the ball for 250 yards a game so that we can try and get something started.
I agree. I think the tide in sports in general has been more of a focus on offense. And I think it goes almost for every sport. It used to be very 50-50 in most sports, but now, depending on which sport, it's either 70-30, 60-40, and I think it's the same for college football.
Absolutely. It's always about, you can look at the Oklahoma State game. It was 62-52. It was literally just have 11 guys out there on defense, stand there and try and protect, try and prevent. But if you can't, whatever, it's fine. We'll just go out there and throw another touchdown.
Yeah, it was insane. I think the halftime score was 38-38.
Exactly. Yeah, it's just offensive minded. So that's why, I'd love to see Scott Frost come in there. He's already made a pretty good claim in Central Florida. So you'd think he'd just bring in more recruits from where he came from. So I don't know. But it would also be nice to get a big name coach, because when you get a big name coach, the big name players come to play for said coach. So you get someone like Chip Kelly, someone might be excited to go play for Chip Kelly and see what he can do. So it's kind of a double-edged sword, whether you want a big name coach who can bring in big name players, or you can bring in a coach that has had a pretty good season in UCF and see where he can take this thing.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Definitely an L of the week. Tough for Gators football and FSU as well. Just throw that in there. But
absolutely. How about yourself? What's your L? Let's hear it.
My L of the week comes very apprehensively, because I've been known to be a stan for this cat, and I appreciate him more than others, and I defend him more than others, and that's not necessarily going to stop. But my L of the week is Lonzo Ball. And people that have now tuned into this podcast, like all three of you, pretty often now are like, geez, this must be the Lonzo Ball podcast. And no, it's not. It's just that a lot of people like to talk about him. And I feel like the rap is totally like, it's insane what the media coverage is like. He is to me, I was thinking about it today, he is the most scrutinized and the most watched rookie since LeBron James. And I don't even think it's a question. LeBron obviously came in being the chosen one, and this guy's supposed to be the next heir to basketball and the one to take the torch, and he did. He met all expectations and exceeded, and then some. And Lonzo has just been, half of it is the whole LeVar Ball fiasco, and just how much he has elevated his popularity and talk shit for him, and really created a brand, and it's just become so controversial that people outside of sports even know about Lonzo. So I think he's the most covered rookie that the NBA has seen since LeBron came in 2003, I think. And with that, I said on the pod that he was having one of the best starts I've ever seen a rookie have. I mean, his first 4 games, he was nearly averaging a triple-double. And since then, we're only about 10, 12 games in. He hasn't been doing too well. His assist total has dropped a couple of assists, as well as his rebounds. And he's got the second worst field goal percentage in the NBA for people that have at least shot 100 shots. So that's not good, so I definitely think that's why he's worthy of L of the Week. But I'll say this. Lonzo Ball has only played like 10 games in the NBA. Like, you can't judge somebody that's just started. Like, and that doesn't just go for basketball or for any rookie. That just goes for any workplace. You can't really judge somebody off their first week in the new job.
Right.
Like, give them a year to learn the reps, to understand the speed, to understand the game, understand how to be effective, understand how he can bring his, creativity and his skill set, and also how people can learn him. I think in a lot of sports, what ends up happening, especially when you're traded, is that half of it is you learning your new setting, but it's also half of it is your new setting learning you. And I think that Lonzo's still going to be fine. A lot of people are like, oh man, Lonzo bust, already ready to...
Right, jumping on that bandwagon.
And that's horrible. Now, I don't think he's going to be winning MVP this season like Vegas sort of does. Vegas has Lonzo as the number 19 favorite to win the MVP, which is absolutely insane.
Incredible.
I did not know that. I could definitely come up with at least 30, 40, 50 players that have a better chance of winning MVP. Most notably, I mean, you could say Devin Booker, who I think has no shot at winning MVP, would have a better shot just because he's a guy that's been established in the league and he gets a super high usage rate. And so, yeah, I don't think Lonzo's at that level. But look, the thing I'm going to say is, yes, Lonzo deserves to have the L of the week. And the whole segment is who has been doing poorly this week, right? Or accumulating to this week. But I don't think that's going to be his future. In the end, Lonzo, when he was asked about how his shooting struggles have gone, he said it's all in his head, to be honest. And I think I agree. A lot of times whenever you play sports and you miss a couple, it starts to get in your head. And all it takes is for him to bust out one game, and then it's going to be the opposite. And then he's going to have a string of 5 games, and the NBA is going to be like, oh my God, Magic Johnson is here. Just chill with all the Magic Johnson, Jason Kidd stuff, and just let the dude play his game, in my opinion. Lastly, if you want to bring up the whole Jason Kidd thing, here's Jason Kidd's stats in his first 10 games in the NBA. He averaged 10 points, just above 6 assists, just above 6 rebounds, and 36% shooting. Lonzo is 9 points, 7 assists, 6 rebounds, 29% shooting. So the only big difference is the percentage shooting, which if you look at J. Kidd, he ended up improving that drastically over his career. No reason Lonzo shouldn't be able to do the same.
Right, the comfortability level.
Yeah, and Jason Kidd, just for people who don't know, when he came into the NBA, he was called Acing Kidd because he had no J. Like, the dude could not shoot.
Well, me?
And he developed that over his career. Lonzo was one of the best three-point shooters in college basketball last season. So I know that his shot looks disgusting. It looks like he's throwing up every time he shoots, and he can only go under. And I agree, and it's the only cringy thing about Lonzo that I can't stand. But it's still something that he's done for his whole life, and that's not really something that he's going to be able to change. So at this
Why
point,
switch what got you into the league?
Exactly. He, the Lakers, and everyone else needs to start embracing it, or else it'll just never work out. So for me, my L of the week is Lonzo, although I'm not going to pin him as a bust yet, like no one else should, and the media especially. The same way if he starts balling, I'm not going to say, guys, I told you he's the next Magic Johnson. I probably will, but just know that I'm doing that just so you guys can banter with me. But look, in the reality, he's going to be just fine. But my L of the week, Lonzo Ball.
Okay, with your L of the week, though, could you just take out Lonzo and put Ball family? I mean, we got to think about the whole week in terms of the entire Ball family here.
Yeah, definitely. We're going to get into that. I definitely think Ball family in general has taken some L's.
Do you think, I don't know, this spotlight, I feel like LA just has not, I feel you got to think of the entire team for the Lakers. It's not like he's coming in and playing with superstars to help him elevate his game anyway. It's kind of completely on him to elevate his own game. So you can't expect him to come out and be an all-star every single game, especially one as a rookie, 2 with players that haven't quite proven themselves. And I mean, with a coach who is good, he has an NBA ring because of his time with the Warriors. But I mean, he's the head coach now, so you got to see what he can do. So I mean, putting unfair crap on Lonzo just because he isn't having a great first 10 games of his rookie year and his probably very long NBA career, that's just not fair. It's ridiculous.
I agree. Last point on that is I watch a lot of NBA, if this is not obvious. Have League Pass, shout out. And I definitely try to watch every Lakers game I can just because I enjoy watching Lonzo. And people are like, why do you enjoy watching Lonzo when his stat line is 9.6 assists? And I honestly will say half of it is just because I seriously think he could double his points and his assists if he was on a better team.
What?
Like, not even a great team. I just think like an average team.
Yep.
Just because the way he passes and stuff. I was thinking about it.
His floor vision is incredible.
It is
it's
incredible.
Something that you barely ever see in the NBA.
And here's the thing: is like a lot of the times the best, the assist leaders in the NBA are people that are on teams that guys can finish. You know, whether it's they have a bunch of shooters or they have a big guy that can catch lobs. You know, DeAndre Jordan, that kind of guy.
Yeah, first of all,
or Clint Capella. So teams and guards, passers really benefit from that because. For Chris Paul, the way I look at it is if he wants to average 10 assists, he's going to have to throw probably 15 to 17 key passes and hope that most of the time they're going to finish. If you watch Lonzo, this stat doesn't really exist yet, but I think it should. Maybe I'll create it and sell it to NBA teams. So I just thought of a business idea. But they should do chances created basically, but realistic chances created, because what ends up happening is either they get fouled or they just don't finish or it just rattles out, and all those things add up when you're talking stats. So yes, a lot of times numbers don't lie, but they don't tell the whole story is the way I look at it.
Mm-hmm.
But anyways, we're going quite long. I know people that don't love Lonzo don't want to hear anymore about
Lonzo passion.
So we'll just go back to that later. But what about another L of the week for you?
I gotta say Saquon Barkley.
Shout out.
That guy just could not get anything going against Michigan State. And I mean, I'm not knocking him. Like, Penn State is a great team, but the reason Penn State is a great team is because Saquon Barkley gets ridiculous yards numbers and touchdown numbers the entire, every single game of the season. And when he isn't performing, Penn State won't perform. I mean, it's a pretty easy formula right there. And I just think, he had two pretty bad games. If you look back to the Ohio State game 2 weeks ago, he had 44 rushing yards, 23 receiving yards, and 1 touchdown. This week against Michigan State, last week against Michigan State, he had 63 rushing yards, 33 receiving yards, and 0 touchdowns. The man just isn't putting up the numbers. Like, if you look back at the Michigan game, 109 rushing yards, 2 touchdowns, 53 yards receiving, and 1 touchdown caught. I mean, if you're expecting him to put up those numbers and then he brings that against Ohio State, like a team like Ohio State, you're going to get beat. It's just not going to happen for you. Mainly, he's the L of the week because of the very, very tight Heisman race. When you're going up against like Baker Mayfield, for example, you got to bring it every single week, especially if you want to win a Heisman.
Yeah, to me, he's got no shot.
Past teams, I know. I mean, he's not going to be playing the best teams for the rest of this season. Like, he's playing Rutgers next week. Couldn't even tell you who else is going to be playing because it's Penn State. I mean, it's not like they're going to be playing all these incredible teams every single year. So, I mean, it's just not. If he doesn't bring it every single game, you can't compete with a guy like Baker who's putting up 300 plus yards every single time he steps foot on the field. Who's he playing? Rutgers next week, Maryland in 2 weeks, and then Nebraska. Those aren't college football powerhouses that he's playing against here, so he's pretty much written himself off as a Heisman hopeful.
Yeah, I agree. I sort of was picking him and wanting him to be the Heisman Trophy winner a couple of weeks ago just because I enjoyed watching Penn State, but yeah, he's really fallen off, unfortunately. I'm honestly pretty surprised because I was pretty high on him and his abilities. But yeah, you brought up a great point. I mean, Baker's been looking ridiculous, and I think there's plenty of other players that right now, especially with the way Saquon is trending. He's going downward. So
see, and what's sad is it was almost against, like, if you look at the Michigan State game, the conditions in that game were incredibly bad. Like, I think they were on delay for 2 hours or something like that. I mean, you can't prepare yourself for a football game if you're going to be sitting for 2 hours in a locker room after you've already started. So you can't entirely knock him, but in the Heisman race, you got to bring it no matter what. And he's just not bringing it right now.
Let's transition over to Dub of the Week. Week in sports, a lot of teams trending up, down. A lot of people doing well, not doing so well. We went some over some of the losers. But this week, I definitely think there's some interesting winners. Most notably for me, I'm going to say the Celtics. I was a person that was super high on them in the beginning of the season. Probably one of the bigger reasons was because of I just really liked the idea of the combination between Kyrie and Gordon Hayward. But I think the biggest reason why I was so high on them, especially over the regular season, was because I think Brad Stevens is going to show why he's the best coach in the NBA.
Okay. Hot take.
Well, and I just think that's now even more of a reason why you should think so, because right now they sit at 10-2. They've won 10 straight games after losing the first few games.
Right.
And a lot of them haven't been that impressive of wins. They've been playing a lot of all right teams. So it's not like they're just beating powerhouse after powerhouse, but the Celtics are definitely doing better than expectations, especially if you look at the fact that they're losing, that they don't have their second best player.
Yep.
I kind of wrote them off. I think I even said in the pod that I sort of see them as now a 4th or 5th seed. And look, it's still early. To be honest, I don't make really anything out of the first 20 to 30 games as far as how positioning is going to go for playoffs. Because I know that right now the Pistons are not going to be the 2nd seed and the Magic are not going to be the 3rd seed. That's just not the case. And if you think so, then just contact me, lockerroombeef@gmail.com, and we can make a bet. Whatever amount of money you have, we can do it.
We'll help set you up with someone to talk to, because you need to watch basketball.
Yeah, you also need to start watching basketball and start getting a new hobby.
Yes.
So I definitely think that the Celtics have been impressive, though. I think Kyrie's just been on one. Probably now, I would say the second best player as far as performing over this past week. I'd say first is Kristaps Porzingis, which could have been another dub of the week that we could have mentioned. He's been doing ridiculous. I actually tried to trade for him in our little league round beef league, and that was unsuccessful. But I tried to trade him for Blake Griffin.
Interesting. I can't wait to hear it. Okay.
So basically, I just think the Celtics are doing way better than people anticipated. To be honest, better than I anticipated. I tried to tell you guys before, Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown are for real, and now you're just seeing it sooner than I thought. They're both averaging in the mid-teens as far as points go, which is unbelievable for Jason Tatum in his rookie year. I've been super impressed with both. Jaylen Brown has developed his outside shot like I thought he had. I mean, I hate to say I told you so, like Nick Lanaba would say. The shout out to the Philly guy, but I told you so. Those guys are ballers, and Al Horford's holding it down.
He's doing his job.
He's doing his job, and he just, like, him being out there on the floor, like, it makes everybody else's job easier. And Kyrie is just, I don't know if he's even improved his ball handling. I know that sounds crazy, but he's just been ridiculous.
It's just becoming highlighted even more now.
Oh yeah, because now it's like a phenomenon.
If you think of like Jason Tatum, you got to think that all those guys are like, oh shit, Gordon Hayward's out. And, all of them are like, all right, we got to step our game up now. And it was, for a rookie, I mean, that's a big deal. You're playing on who was supposed to be either the Eastern Conference first or second round seed, however you see, based on last year and going into this year. And you got to think that that's pretty intimidating for a rookie to come into, but he's doing exactly what he needs to be doing and some, and that's pretty impressive for Boston. You got to think that it's only going to get better when Gordon Hayward gets back.
The other thing I'm going to say is I think there's something to be said for, I've said this before, when you're getting drafted, so I would say almost more than half of your success isn't really based on you, it's based off situation. And look at the guys that are being asked to be the franchise player. Look at like a Markelle Fultz, which I know Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid exist, but he was supposed to be the final piece to the puzzle.
The process.
And he can't even find time on the floor,
Yep.
And look at Lonzo struggling because he's looked at as, you know, the new heir to Magic Johnson.
Exactly.
So I'm not saying those guys are not going to have successful careers, but a guy like Jason Tatum can walk in, be the third option, and just blossom.
Yep.
And so it's a huge advantage for him. But like you're saying, it's a tough task, but he's doing very well.
Yeah, I'm happy for Brad Stevens. I like Brad Stevens a lot. I think that if you think of a lot of NBA coaches, they're almost big babysitters.
What?
I mean, you know what I mean? Like Steve Kerr, like respect to Steve Kerr. Like that man's doing some incredible things over in Golden State. But how much coaching does that guy do? You think he's just like, go have fun. Just go do whatever you want to do. Keep it simple. Draymond, don't kick anyone in the balls. KD, don't get thrown out for, you know, talking too much. Steph, don't throw your mouthpiece at refs.
KD, don't leave to a team you lose.
Yeah, don't go to Houston. I mean, you got to think. I mean, Brad Stevens, he's got to do some, you know, but he's got to do some coaching, and he seems to be one of the very few that continues to still coach the game of basketball during the game.
I agree. I think he's the best basketball X's and O coach in the NBA, hands down. And I think the only other person that you could even mention is Greg Popovich, but I actually think Brad Stevens is even better.
Yep.
I think Greg Popovich has a great system. I think he's a lot about mindset, and I think that's important. But as far as like down to I need a 3 to win the game, there's 6 seconds left, I want Brad Stevens telling me my play.
You got to have that level of creativity. And shout out to Greg, like great coach, but I feel like Brad Stevens just has a certain level of creativity, and he has the players that are willing to kind of go outside the system to do what Brad Stevens wants them to do.
Yeah, I agree. All right, so that's one of my dubs of the week, the Boston Celtics. How about you? What's your dub of the week?
I already mentioned him, Baker Mayfield. That man is only getting better. And if you look at the stats that guy's putting up, they're video game numbers. I mean, he hasn't thrown for under 250 yards once this season. And the only times that he's thrown under 200 times, only twice in 9 games, but got over 300 yards in total yards with rushing. So he hasn't been under 300 yards a single time this year.
Take that for data.
As a quarterback.
That's incredible.
And if you look at Oklahoma State, I mean, threw for 598 yards, almost hit 600 total yards with rushing. He had -9 rushing yards, so he didn't really almost hit it, but yeah, you know.
He's slinging it though.
Shout out offensive lineman. I mean, and with throwing all those balls downfield, he's only thrown for 5 interceptions.
Wow.
5 interceptions against some pretty good teams. Like Ohio State, he slung it against them. Baylor always has a pretty okay defense. Texas, the big rivalry there. Oklahoma State they were top 10 team when they played each other. And then if you think this week, they played TCU. So in terms of strength of schedule for the Heisman Trophy, Baker already has a stronger strength of schedule coming up than Saquon. So you got to think he's already put himself ahead. So he really just has to finish it out with staying very decent almost to try and keep himself on top of the Heisman race. So I think he's definitely put himself in the dub of the week. I mean, he's just lighting it up and on this team. I mean, he has 3,226 passing yards this season. 28 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. He has 3 more games to go, so he could pass his last year's season stats of 3,965 yards, 40 touchdowns, and 8 interceptions. See, I mean, he's doing that and some. Let's talk about his QBR. His raw QBR is 91. His adjusted QBR is 92.3 average for the entire year. That's pretty incredible for a college football player who you think, you know, is going to be out there showboating and stuff. And he's a very vocal guy. He's always going to be out there having fun. So you think, oh, he's going to have, you know, the jitters or something like that, or he's going to, you know, go do too much more than what he can do. But when he's locked in and he's under center, he's ready to go and he's ready to sling the ball and maybe put himself into the college football playoff. We'll see.
Yeah, I think he's got a good shot. Another thing I want to ask you about, I think Baker's been impressive in college, no question. I mean, he's having one of the standout seasons, not only this season, but in recent years. He kind of reminds me of one of those quarterbacks that looks like he can dominate the college football game, But could he do anything in the NFL?
He's made for college football. And it's sad to say, but there are just so many players that Johnny Manziel, Tim Tebow. I mean, you got to think there's just been so many players that have been cut and dry, made for college football, but they just don't transition well into the NFL. And sadly, I think Baker might be one of those guys. I think he'll have a pretty decent career, maybe. I don't know. The good thing for him, though, is that he hasn't put himself in position to take too many hits already. So he runs when it's smart to. So you don't see him out there running the ball for that many yards or that many attempts. I mean, the most attempts he's had running in a game was 11 against Iowa State. So it wasn't like he was putting himself in big positions to get injured. So you got to think that if you can teach him, like put him into a system, then he might be successful, because he's not, like Johnny Manziel and Tim Tebow. It was always check your first option. You don't got your first option, take off, just run and make something happen. Baker can at least go through transition, go, wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3. So I don't think he's going to be extremely successful in the NFL, but I do think he could definitely be a starting quarterback in the NFL.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'd like to see how that ends up, but I think he's going to be the Heisman winner, and I would be surprised if he doesn't get into the playoff.
Yeah, he has to be the Heisman winner. I mean, he's finished top 5 in the voting for the last 2 years. You got to think just by default they have to give him the trophy just for giving him all these false expectations, like, hey, congrats, you made it to the finals, but we're going to give it to someone else. Yeah. Hey, congrats, you made it to the finals, but we're going to give it to someone else. This year is yours. Go get it, Baker.
I'm going to transition to another dub of the week. One of my dub of the weeks, and might be a little controversial, or people might not realize what comes with it, but one of our podcasts very recently was about Eric Bledsoe and where he would end up. And so my dub of the week is the Milwaukee Bucks. And a lot of people might think, wow, Eric Bledsoe, he's a pretty good player. Now he's going to be playing with Giannis. That could be a really good team. And superficially, just looking at it like that, I think that's true. But there's a lot more to it. Basically, just to give you a recap, he was traded for Greg Monroe, a 2018 protected first round pick and a 2018 second round pick. And the thing about it is Greg Monroe, although a pretty effective player, he's becoming less and less effective in this NBA, where it's very few players that can play back to the basket well, and not only well, but where that service is needed, just because now so much of the NBA is run and gun. So I think it's good for Phoenix. They're going to be able to utilize Greg Monroe, and I think if you have him in fantasy or something like that, I think his numbers will actually go up, because he'll be able to have more options, and Phoenix tends to give the ball to Devin Booker and just sit on it. So it'll just be another outlet for them. And I actually think they did a good job as well. I think this was a very even trade, kind of like the Celtics-Cavs trade with Kyrie and Isaiah Thomas. I can't really say, I could have said that the Phoenix Suns was also a dub of the week, because I think the fact that they didn't get 30 cents on the dollar in this deal is amazing, considering they told Eric Bledsoe to go ahead and just camp out until we figure out a trade for you.
Right.
I think they got a decent amount back, 2 picks and a serviceable player, and somebody that you could possibly trade. I definitely think it was pretty good by Phoenix. But like I said, my original dub of the week is Milwaukee Bucks, and here's why. My biggest concern is that Bledsoe has had a lot of injury recently.
He just had a knee surgery or something recently?
Yeah, over the past 4 seasons, he's had 2 major injuries. He basically has half a meniscus amongst his 2 knees.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, that's not the kind of numbers you want for that.
Not good knees.
Yeah, not good knees. I think that as long as he's able to stay healthy, the combo of him, Brogdon, and Giannis, that is a fantastic,
it's pretty dangerous,
fantastic backcourt. And I just think that he's also going to be able to bring a defensive prowess that he used to have, but then he just became so uninspired at Phoenix that it just kind of went away.
Sure.
But his calling card has always been his tenacity on defense, And I'm kind of hoping that Jason Kidd and Milwaukee's able to bring that back out of them, and I think they will, because Milwaukee is statistically one of the worst defensive teams in the league, which is part of the reason why they're not performing too well, although Giannis has been balling.
Well, yes, thank God Giannis has been balling.
Yeah, Giannis has. And I really like Brogdon's game. And another thing to consider is a lot of people forget Jabari Parker. I mean, the guy was a number 2 pick. Personally, I would have picked him over Andrew Wiggins, and I still would have.
What?
Not because Andrew Wiggins obviously has been able to tally more points and minutes since. But I think as long as Jabari's able to get healthy, I think long term he'll have a better NBA career. And I've just always liked Jabari's game more. And I think he started to prove that when he was healthy that past season before he tore his ACL. And they should get him back very late this season. But a Jabari, Eric Bledsoe, Brogdon, Giannis team is not one I would want to face.
That's a pretty dangerous team right there.
That's very dangerous. And it's the kind of team that might lose first round very easily. Just because they're going to have to try to sort of not only incorporate Eric Bledsoe, but also Jabari Parker back into the swing of things. Yeah. But that team is going to be dangerous because the worst thing you want to face is talent when it comes to just these kind of games that can go either way. And sometimes talent, you can't supplement any more energy to offset that. So for me, the Bucks are the dub of the week. Although the interesting thing I have to say is for Locker Room Beef's Twitter account, we ran a Twitter poll Tuesday, as we famously normally do now, and the question was, now with this trade, where do you see the Bucks in the Eastern Conference? And after a day of voting, 0% see them as the 1 seed, which I found interesting. Not even one person thinks this might make them the top dog, which I'm not saying they are, but I'm saying it's interesting to me that no one sees them that way. And 20% selected the 2nd seed, which I thought was about right. 41%, which was the biggest percentage, said the 3rd seed, and just under that, 39% said 4th seed or lower. So really, in the eyes of the people, at least our Locker Room Beef family,
shout out.
Not much of a difference as far as Eric Bledsoe on the squad, which sort of shocks me, because if you just look at right now, Eric Bledsoe, Greg Monroe, Eric Bledsoe's can make way bigger of a difference.
Big upgrade.
I agree. And the thing about my theory with any team that wants to even try to win a championship, you cannot have a point guard that is subpar. So I think Eric Bledsoe just fits the bill for how good your point guard has to be in order for you to have a chance. And so now I sort of see Milwaukee as a team that could be dangerous.
I think this trade only made Milwaukee stronger. And on the other side, I think it gave Phoenix a nice future. You know, you got 2 pretty good picks, and you have a player that will just kind of get you to next season. You know, it's just it feels like Phoenix is almost already like, we'll just kind of see where we go this season, and then we'll figure it out from there, which is fine. I mean, there are those teams that just don't really have it yet. And you got to think that if you get 2 really good picks this season, you know, out of this trade, then you have a pretty bright future ahead of you. So, I mean, you got to think that in terms of where both teams are, you had to think that Milwaukee was a contender at, you know, some level of a contender. This only makes them more of a contender. You had to think that Phoenix is a future kind of team. This only makes them that much stronger of a future kind of a team. So in the end, I think it definitely benefits both teams for what they were kind of looking for. And it benefits Eric Bledsoe, because if you want to get out of a place, then you're not going to play that strong. You're not going to hustle back on defense. You're not going to give 100%. But if you're if you're traded away to a team that is now a contender, where hopefully he's happy, you know, good for him. He knew what he wanted. He went out and got it. Now he has Giannis to play with. He has Jabari to, in the future, play with. So you got to think that it's pretty exciting for Milwaukee.
Yeah, another interesting ripple, last thing I'll say on that is I think the signing of Bledsoe now, if you look at the contract deals, now the Bucks are going to have to make a decision on whether they want to have Jabari or have Eric Bledsoe, because Jabari is actually going to be a restricted free agent
after this season.
Yeah, so I wonder if they are kind of trying to swing him out.
Preparing for next year.
Or if they're trying to swing out Eric Bledsoe. So it'll be interesting because both of them have an injury past. Personally, I would take Jabari. He's younger, and I think he's got a much bigger ceiling. But it definitely adds that ripple as well. So we'll see how that goes.
That's pretty interesting. I didn't know the restricted free agent part. That interesting.
Yeah,
Milwaukee's
exactly.
scheming up.
Yeah, Milwaukee, they're going to have to make some decisions. So, I mean, they're capped. In the end, they're a small market. So they can't have all the talent they want if they want to pay them.
Yeah.
All right, so let's move to a new segment. The segment is basically when we have a very interesting story on Locker Room Beef Podcast, and we really would just want to take a deep dive into it and not really have any distractions or have to relate it to anything, and we just want to go right into it and go 1,020% in it. This is Keeping It 100. We're gonna keep it 100 with this LiAngelo Ball story. We mentioned before that basically the L of the week was not only Lonzo Ball, but just the Ball family in general. And LiAngelo Ball, as many people know, arrested in China.
Oh my gosh!
This past week, on a trip for his first really season at UCLA. Just to give people an idea, they haven't even really played any games yet. This is like a preseason little tour where they're going to play a game versus Georgia Tech, and I cannot believe that this kid was so dumb to go shoplift. So basically, he's staying at the Hyatt Regency in this sort of outskirt town in China, and it's a pretty nice hotel. It's like
a very nice hotel.
It's like a 4.5-star hotel or something like that, and the craziest part is, so he goes to Louis Vuitton and steals a pair of sunglasses. And I guess it's him and 3 friends. Now, basically, this is all alleged right now. But then the story is like 20-something cops kind of start fishing out that something happened. And the hotel is right next to the store. So they start putting 2 and 2 together. And they start questioning a bunch of teammates and people. And 3 UCLA players, including LiAngelo Ball, is arrested and brought to Chinese jail, and they were bailed out. And so right now, basically, it's just a bunch of question marks. Alfred, the coach, has had to sort of just deal with what the heck do I do now with my players. Obviously, they weren't able to play in the Georgia Tech game, but that still happened. An extremely bad look, not only for LiAngelo Ball, but the entire family. Yes, it's not that big of a deal as far as like he's a young kid. Kids do stupid stuff all the time. They shoplift. But it is a big deal in the sense of like, you know, you start to look at reputation and how people act. And if this guy had any promise, personally, I never even thought he would have good chance to have.
How many times have you heard LiAngelo Ball brought up with promise? You hear Lonzo, then you hear LeVar's promise 80 years ago when he played basketball, quote unquote. You hear about LaMelo's promise, and that kid is like 4'8". And then I couldn't even told you that LiAngelo was one of their brothers if I hadn't seen a picture of all 3 of them, honestly. That's how little you hear about LiAngelo Ball.
Yeah, I mean, look, to LiAngelo Ball's credit, you know, when they won state championships in Chino's Hill, he was the leading scorer all 4 years that he was there. So he's good. I mean, he got a scholarship to UCLA, but I don't think he's going to get in the NBA, let alone play that many minutes for UCLA. I think he might be all right for UCLA, but he'll probably be a rotation guy at best. Mm-hmm. I'd honestly be impressed if he was like a starter and a major contributor for UCLA, because I would not only give LeVar more props, but just the family in general. But just a horrible look. You haven't even started your first semester really at UCLA, and you're already getting busted. And the stupidest part for me is you're overseas.
The worst part is you're in China, son. China and the U.S. aren't big friends. No. So you got to think that if they have a chance to nab an American and put him in prison, they're absolutely going to do it. I mean, it's just so stupid. If you're going to do something like that, do it in America, dude. Like, do it in a U.S. prison where you're at least going to get guaranteed 3 meals and a bed whenever you're in prison. Don't do it in China where you might be put into a freaking work camp. I mean, my God, son. And then for LeVar to say it's not that big of a deal, your son is in a Chinese prison. The minimum sentence for in Chinese law for shoplifting is 3 years in prison.
Oh my gosh. The
maximum is 10 years. There was a report that I read that a woman stole a cell phone and she got 10 years in prison.
What?
In a Chinese prison. I mean, this kid could have completely screwed over his entire future to be sitting in prison. I mean, oh my God, you got to be kidding me. And then the other two were absolutely just whatever. This is a story about LiAngelo, but I mean, all three of them, you got to be kidding me. LeVar, it's not that big of a deal. I can't wait to hear what this kid has to say about it. Put a mic in front of him. Let's hear it. Why'd you do it?
Yeah, I'm really surprised. Clearly he wasn't level-headed. At least I hope he thinks he wasn't level-headed. But yeah, China, not the country you want to mess with.
No.
And I'd be really surprised. Right now, they're basically like on a 20-day sentence in their hotel. It's like basically like a house arrest. Yep. Which is kind of funny because they're in like a super nice hotel. They can use the facilities or whatever, but they can't leave the hotel until they start doing more and more research. Supposedly there's video, which hasn't been released to the public, I don't think, but there's video of them shoplifting at Louis Vuitton so they can start pulling more evidence.
Wow, so there's a video. Okay, I didn't know that there was a video. See, no, when I first heard about this, listen, I'm not a huge critic against LeVar. Like, I get what you're doing. I'm not a huge fan of it, but when I first heard this story, it was very interesting to me because, you know, China had to know that these guys were coming over, and Chinese police had to have known that UCLA was coming over, and then a big name guy like LiAngelo Ball was coming over. So I was almost thinking, you know, it'd be a pretty convenient story if they arrested LiAngelo Ball. That was honestly my first takeaway from this, but now that you see that there's video, and that's obviously out the door. And it's just getting deeper and deeper with all these different, you know, they were released on bail, so now UCLA thought that they were guilty. Or, I mean, not thought that they were guilty, sorry, that was a poor choice of words, but wanted to get him out of prison. I mean, LeVar, I can't get over LeVar saying it's not that big of a deal. I really can't. Your son just got arrested in a Chinese prison.
I think LeVar is a genius.
What?
Because like LeVar clearly knows it's a big deal, but his like first reaction was just to say it wasn't. And I think it was so smart because maybe some people are like, oh, maybe it's not. But honestly, it is a big deal. Look, LiAngelo better hope that this doesn't go to court because China's conviction rate is like taking germs out with hand sanitizer. It's 99.9%.
I'm out, man.
So if this thing goes to court, he's gonna be screwed.
Yeah, he's
and
screwed.
you were saying it's years. Like China doesn't play around. You take something from them, they'll screw you up.
They'll take something from you, your life.
And the other thing people aren't talking
years.
about is even if he was let go and everything's fine and the other two players are let go, whatever. Who says that UCLA is going to be okay with it and just wants him to play for their basketball team?
Yeah.
You really think UCLA wants that kind of bad rap? I don't know. I'd be surprised. And so another ripple is if UCLA bans LiAngelo, you know LeVar's going to be like, okay, we're going to transfer. And then what that's going to mean is now LaMelo's not going to go to UCLA because you know LeVar does not have any ties to any coach, right?
Exactly.
Unless it's him. And I definitely think that now this changes a lot of just the LeVar, the way he envisions things. Yeah. And I'd be surprised. But I also got a chance to watch their little reality television show.
Okay.
Which, just for the listeners, so you guys know, you probably can't meet a person that is sort of discusses reality television more than me. Now, if you're a fan of reality TV, more power to you. But to me, I sort of look at life like, why watch somebody else live life? Why don't you just go live it yourself?
Yep.
And that's sort of a, I guess, negative way to look at it. But anyways, I watched a little bit of The Big Baller reality television show, and it's interesting. I mean, just like any reality television show, you get a deeper inside look. I got to actually learn about LiAngelo a little bit, what kind of person he's like.
He's an idiot.
All three of them have a girl, which is kind of funny because I'm just like wondering how long each of them are going to last. And LiAngelo actually has had a girl for a long time, and she's been at UCLA. She's like a senior at UCLA. And,
whoa.
And yes, I wonder how she feels about this. I wonder where his one call went.
Interesting.
But, yeah, so
it went to LeVar, who said, it ain't that big of a deal, boy, and he hung up the phone.
I'll tell you, girl.
Yeah.
But the biggest thing I took away from it, which I think you might be surprised by this, is that I've always kind of supported LeVar, and actually until he went on The Herd with Colin Cowherd and Christine Leahy, and he just disrespected the crap out of Christine Leahy, and I personally just thought he went way too far. I mean, not looking at her, saying that he scares her and to stay in her own lane, and like it was very cryptic. And yeah, I just thought that was too far. Believe me, look, I'm a businessman myself. I have my own. Like, I appreciate him trying to create his own, and he's done a fantastic job. He's done something that probably less than 0.1% of the population has been able to do, which is have 3 kids, have Division I scholarships. So he's already winning. But the thing about LeVar that I really picked up on in the reality television show that they now have is that the mom is totally not what I expected, and she is a lot more disabled than I knew. Now, she had gone through a stroke. I did a little bit of research. She had gone through a stroke or two a couple months ago, and people had heard about that, and they were talked about that, and Lonzo was asked about it and said, my dad's taking care of her. And I sort of thought it was like something where it was scary and they didn't know how it was, and then she came back to normal. But you could tell within just 5 minutes of watching the show that she is very unresponsive. She wasn't really able to give a whole lot in conversations. She didn't really have much to say. She's very quiet. She hardly even has any facial reactions. I was like, man, and it's tough because you see LeVar, and this is the part where I really started to feel for him, and I kind of like felt more highly of him. Is he really tried to just like get her to goof around and joke and play, and really wants her to kind of like be her old self? And it must be tough for him because I can clearly tell there's been some serious trauma. And for him to, I think a lot of people, they just bought like a $5 million house in California. I think a lot of people who sort of feel fame and money can start, especially if he doesn't think his wife is the most beautiful looking girl in the world. I think a lot of people would unfortunately drop their wife or cheat on them or whatever. And I don't get that vibe at all from LeVar. I totally feel like he always says this, that's my woman, I'm going to take care of her. And I can really appreciate that.
That's respect there. That's, good for him. He's definitely a committed guy. It's funny that you say that she had a stroke. I saw a video of him whenever he was wheeling someone out in a wheelchair when he was landed in China. And I was like, who the hell is that woman? Because I had no idea who it was. I was like, thought he had a wife, but he was wheeling someone who seemed pretty decently young. Like, didn't seem like a grandmother of the Ball family or something like that. So I was, okay, so she had a stroke. Well, that's definitely why he was wheeling her out. Interesting. Very interesting. Where'd you find that?
Yeah, you can, if you want to watch any of that stuff, I found on YouTube. It was basically like a 20-minute episode. I think I watched 2 episodes. I watched the one where it's LaMelo's birthday and he gets a Lambo.
I saw a video of him and he was taking a video of LiAngelo getting a Ferrari.
Yeah, that's another one too. What's with LiAngelo and LaMelo with the eyebrow slits?
Yeah, that's
what
I don't know. If they're gangsta.
I mean, I guess.
Gangsta.
I mean, thank you, Lonzo, for not doing that. I just think you just look like such like a different person when you have slits in your eyebrow.
Well, and you put it on, like, see now, if you think of like LiAngelo, like, he looks a little bit more, like it could fit him a little bit better.
Oh my gosh, that was the most politically correct thing you could have said. That was the lightest way. Just say he looks like a G. Just say he looks hood like a blood.
Yeah, but if you look at like LaMelo, that dude has frosted tips, but like frosted half of his head. So it just doesn't fit. That guy looks like a clown.
He does.
But he has a shoe deal. I don't. Shout out to you.
Shout out.
Yep.
I'll give my props.
Yep. So I definitely think if you guys want to, just put that on the background, it is quite entertaining. Obviously, LeVar Ball's an entertaining guy. They do a pretty decent job of trying to give you a backstage pass. I mean, personally, I just watched it because I enjoy Lonzo, but it's really interesting. You can kind of get an idea of, what their lives are like, and it's obviously, somewhat entertaining. That's why they have a television show, but yeah, go check that out. You can just pull it up on YouTube. But yeah, so that's Keeping It 100. Definitely a story I wanted to dissect, and a crazy story, and we could, we can see where it ripples. I mean, worst case scenario, the brother's spending 10 years in jail.
Sorry, brother, spending 10 years in a Chinese prison.
Yeah.
Good luck.
So we'll see how that goes. Hope, hoping for the best for him, but we'll see how that goes. Anyways, we're going to start a new segment, one I'm extremely excited about and one I think is going to be a keeper. So everybody nowadays is into hot takes. We're in the hot take sort of sports news century, and it's just basically who has the hottest take is the person that's going to get known. And we even had a hot take segment ourselves, so we can't say we're any better.
Talk about LeVar Ball. That man has some hot takes.
For sure. But where we're going to start is the problem with hot takes typically is the people don't actually really believe what they say. They just want to kind of be heard and say something drastic and have two people agree with them out of a million. And so what we're going to introduce is kind of lukewarm takes.
What?
So takes that we agree with and that might have a little bit of spice to them, a little kick. You might have to dip them in ranch or blue cheese.
Sure.
But you don't need milk after.
Yeah.
They're not that spicy.
It's not like the one chip challenge with Shaq. It's like stepping into a nice warm shower.
Exactly.
When you step into a hot shower, you're gonna ooh, ow. But if you get into a warm shower, you're like, I like this.
Yeah, if you step into the shower after your girl, it's going to be blazing. But if it's just you turned it on, it's probably just going to be fine and warm. So basically, going along with the warm concept, we're going to introduce some warm takes, just a couple. So what's your warm take?
Steelers are going to win the AFC. They're going to go on to the Super Bowl. So I'm just going to start with the rest of the schedule. It's not the hardest schedule. The two remaining tough games out of the 8 are probably going to be against the Titans and the Patriots. The rest are against the Packers, who have no quarterback and they're not looking too good.
No.
The Texans, who now have no Deshaun Watson and not really much of a defense.
Rip.
And then the Browns. They also play the Colts, who are not a good team, and the Bengals, who have a decent defense, not that great. So I definitely think they're going to finish out the rest of the season strong. They may lose the Patriots game, but that's really the only game right now that I could see them losing. So they're going to go into the playoffs with a pretty strong record, in my opinion. They could win more of those games just with the way that the NFL is. But anyway, they're definitely, in my opinion, going to win the AFC North. So they're going to put themselves in a pretty strong position. They finished 2016 well. They didn't, they obviously didn't make it to the Super Bowl, but they definitely had a pretty good end to the season. They didn't start it very well, but they had a strong end. Also, you have Le'Veon Bell, who came back, in my opinion, a little bit sooner than I thought he was after his holdout. He definitely was like, shit, might as well play some football. He signed and started getting back onto the field. So he's only getting stronger. You have the emergence of Juju Smith-Schuster, who's one of their wide receivers, now probably their wide receiver 2 after Antonio Brown. Martavis Bryant isn't too happy about that one, but sorry about that. Le'Veon Bell averages 4 yards a carry. I mean, that's, second and 6 right there. And then you have Antonio Brown, who's averaging 14.5 yards a catch. That's a pretty strong average right there. So you already have one of the best wide receivers in the NFL, one of the best running backs in the NFL. You have a pretty strong defense who has a pretty good amount of forced turnovers this year. I think they have 13 or 14 so far this season. You have Ben Roethlisberger, who's always a pretty strong quarterback. He's definitely going to take some hits, but he's always going to be ready to get right back up and bounce back. They did the one chip challenge. So obviously they got some pretty big kahunas right there. So they definitely are ready to take on whatever stands in their way. Shaq's face.
This one chip challenge is
Shaq's
for real.
face whenever he did it was pretty wild.
Only the mightiest.
Right.
Oh, it's priceless. He took a fourth of. He tried to eat the whole chip, and only a fourth got in there. And he's like, "Oh, it's nothing." And then, afterward, he just completely folded.
And then, I just think that you got someone like Mike Tomlin, who definitely has control of that locker room. I mean, he's definitely a no nonsense kind of guy, as proven by the way that he handles his locker room, the way that he handles his press conferences, and he's really not afraid to bench anyone that kind of crosses him in any way. So I definitely think that they're going to be winning the AFC, and I think they have a pretty strong case to get into the Super Bowl. Probably going to be playing the Philadelphia Eagles, but that's another warm take that I won't even get on right now. So yeah, I see the Steelers being the AFC champs.
I think it's a good warm take. My year-end warm take is that Blake Griffin should be a top 5 MVP candidate and should be top 5 in the odds. I think the Clippers, they started off well. They've been slipping. The big thing, obviously, for Blake is being injury-free. But right now he is, and he is balling, in case you're not watching Clipper basketball. And he needs a little bit more help. I think he's got some in the beginning of the season, and players are just going a little bit downhill. But I think Blake, if he is entertaining to watch too. If people need to figure out whether they want to watch him or not, I definitely recommend it, just because we haven't really seen Blake Griffin in this role, just because Chris Paul has always been the main ball handler in Los Angeles. So I definitely think Blake Griffin is shooting himself to be a very good player for the Clippers and for the league. And I would not be surprised if the Clippers not only get into the playoffs, but get into the playoffs, because Blake Griffin is absolutely destroying the NBA. The reality is there's only a handful of players that could guard Blake Griffin, just because of how big he is. And he's almost like he almost plays like a Ben Simmons role, where he's sort of the point guard. But I would put it as he's more of a point forward, whereas Ben Simmons almost plays more like a point guard, because Ben Simmons faces the basket, whereas a lot of time Blake tries to go back to the basket and navigate that way. But it's still extremely effective. And Blake is sort of going back to his old ways, where he's just dunking on people and trying to finish, downward rather than with a finger roll. Mm-hmm. And it's a lot more entertaining to watch. I mean, everyone remembers that game he had versus the Knicks, where 5 of his top 8 dunks ever were on the same game. And he's sort of going back into that old mold. Also, not to mention the fact that he's on my fantasy team, so it's very appreciated.
Even though you wanted to trade him.
Well, poor Zingod is he's making a good case for himself.
I see. Okay.
But yeah, for me, Blake Griffin, I think, should be my warm take, a top 5 candidate for MVP odds right now. If he gets injured, obviously that's different. But right now, he's only like 17 or 16. I think he should be way higher than that.
Oh, well, he's only 17?
He's only 17.
And Lonzo's 19?
And Lonzo's 19.
Okay.
Granted, that was last week, but still.
That doesn't matter to me.
That's incredible. That
absolutely doesn't matter to me. That's a pretty good warm take. So you think because Chris Paul's gone, obviously that's going to help boost Blake Griffin. I mean, that's a given right there. He's definitely already going to have to take over a good amount of the responsibility, actually. You're not going to see DeAndre dribbling the ball down the court.
Yeah, my preseason take was that I think Kawhi will win MVP, and I still believe that.
Okay.
I think Giannis has given himself a good shot, obviously, but I'm going to stick with my preseason pick. But I think Blake should be top 5, and right now he's playing like it, so people need to watch out.
Sure.
But last thing I just want to transition to, we've done this the past couple of pods, and you're no different. I want us to give a little bit of a league round beef fantasy basketball update. Obviously, we had a very sort of complex auction basketball fantasy draft that you were clearly a part of, and took some heavy hitters. So I just want you to talk about what your draft process was like a little bit, how you think that went, how your team is, who's on your team, and just some big surprises as we've kind of gotten to the season.
Sure. Well, I'm pretty okay with my team. Pretty okay. I like them. I like
You're not going to marry them. Just date them for a few months.
I'm not going to marry them. I'll mess around with them, but I will marry them.
Can you define messing around?
Well, I'll date them for a few months and just keep it politically correct.
Oh, wow.
So obviously the first heavy hitter that I wanted was the guy I was very much so prepared to spend a whole lot of money to get this guy, Giannis. Was not afraid to just dish out the money for that man. I just kept going with it. So I'm pretty happy with getting him on my team. I mean, he's definitely performing, doing a great job. Probably the reason that I'm 1-2 right now. Not saying that 1-2 is good, but he definitely helped me get that win. One thing I wish I didn't have happen was ending up with $35 left over after the draft. I definitely mismanaged the money because I didn't know how much later players would be going for. I didn't think that it would be only like $4 or $5. I was expecting a little bit more. So I thought that if I, conserved and saved some money down the road, then it would help prepare me for, getting those players that would get me the scrappy points. But that was not the case. Definitely left over with 35, and I was pretty pissed because I could probably have used that for getting some players, not Lonzo.
Yikes.
One thing, yeah, sorry, had to do it. Beef.
Shout out.
One thing that I wish is I need to spend more time setting my lineup. I feel like I've definitely been slacking on checking my lineup.
Oh man, we got a rookie over here.
Well, it's not even that. It's just that I've neglected to. I go to work, I come home, and I'm like, fuck it. I'm not even going to check it this time. Eric Bledsoe, I've had as a starter the entire season. That guy didn't play 6 games. So that's probably why I have Matt Trapp ran me out of the water. But I think he would have regardless. That man has a solid ass team. So yeah, I mean, I'm in a good place. I just need to keep checking my team, making sure I have the players that I need in the starting lineup. Obviously, the ones playing would be a good way to start. So yeah. Hassan Whiteside is out there. Marcus Smart. Willie Cauley-Stein, I was kind of expecting a little more from. I don't know. I felt like he might have a better season than he did last year, kind of just mature a little bit more and get himself back out there. It's been okay. Valanciunas is playing pretty well. Obviously, Giannis is playing incredible. Kentavious is playing pretty well. So, I mean, I'm happy with it. Could it be better? Absolutely. Could it be worse? Of course.
Yeah, it's true. I think you have a pretty good squad. I mean, like I said, I tried to trade for Porzingis. I just kind of like got a little buzz about Porzingis,
right.
And I know that the owner of Porzingis, one of our biggest LRB fans, Dylan Stoner, shout out. He has Porzingis, and I was trying to get him for Blake Griffin. He didn't take it though, so I was a little bit mad about that. But I also threw in Derrick Rose in there in exchange for Isaiah Thomas, which might sound crazy, but like Isaiah Thomas isn't going to give him any points for the next couple of months. So I was trying to see if I could snag him too, because I know he sort of had interest in giving him up. So it'll be interesting. I'm definitely probably the person that tries to scheme the most at these trades, but I haven't been able to get people to bite much. But yeah, I mean, look, the cool thing about this league and why I bring it up every time is typically how players are doing in this league is how they're doing in real life.
Yeah.
And so it has a really good scoring system, and I like to kind of keep in with it because I can tell who's doing well in the NBA just through this little league round beef league. But yeah, I think it's a really interesting team. I think you having Hassan Whiteside, I think it's a very good player for you.
He's averaging 37, 38 points. Giannis is averaging 55. Got Otto Porter Jr. out there averaging 36. Very good player right now. And the rest of them are averaging 20, 25, 27 points. I mean, it's a fun team to play for.
What?
I'm on the injury reserve. Don't expect to see me anytime soon.
Exactly. Yeah, I think you have a pretty good squad, and definitely going to keep tuned in. Only 1-2, so just keep taking those L's for me, especially when you play me.
Don't worry.
It's probably coming up here soon, but
is it? Let's see it. Let's check that schedule. When are we playing?
I think right now the Philly guy is the worst in our league, and actually Matt Trapp is the best in our league, and then everyone else sort of just falls in the middle.
When I say Matt Trapp killed me, I think he doubled my points.
No.
Hold on. I mean, I think he did.
That's a tragedy, Brain.
Oh, it was bad. It was bad.
Come on. Brain of all people needs to be able to set their lineup.
I know. That's the sad part is my damn name is Brain and I can't even check my damn team.
Didn't even have the wherewithal.
Yeah, it was bad.
He's an idiot.
Let's see. What was the score? Yeah, I lost 745.1 to 1269.9.
Oh my.
Yeah, so it was not an ideal game. We play week 6, so we're coming up.
Yikes. Well, I'm sitting at 2-1 right now. There's 2 3-0 teams, 3 3-0 teams actually, I think.
No, it should just be 2.
No, yeah, it was just 2 3-0 teams, which is Matt Trapp, and also one of our biggest LRB fans, Tommy Montoya. Shout out.
LRB number 1 fan. I mean, there's no way to.
Yeah, he's definitely our number 1 fan. Reads every article, which I'm going to shamelessly plug. Definitely on our website, look if you enjoy the podcast and you're not really into reading. We kind of even make articles for you. Like, they're very short. We try to have people, all of our family kind of contribute to it. Recently, we just had Ace Boogie, Andrew Wade, write an article about John Wall and the Wizards. They're literally 3, 4, 5 paragraphs. Typically, if we go any longer, it's just because we think you're going to find it more interesting. So, look, I don't even really enjoy reading myself, but I actually do these articles because they're pretty entertaining and funny. They're not too professional, but they actually provide you some good insight. So if you ever want to beef or banter with one of your mates, then definitely kind of read up on that. But yeah, go check it out, lockerroombeef.com. And if you're not doing so already, go check out our social media, mainly Instagram and Twitter. We have content that's exclusive for both on each. So if you're following one, make sure you go follow the other. But it's at Locker Room Beef. Typically, you can also find, when we have articles and podcasts and everything else posted through the social media. But we also have a Facebook page, YouTube, if you prefer that. Obviously, our podcast, you're probably either listening through SoundCloud or Apple Podcasts, so just go use whatever you'd like. And if you're really, really feeling generous, I would deeply appreciate it. If you want to send me email, even don't do that, but you can at lockerroombeef@gmail.com. But just submit us a review. If it's anything less than 5 stars, then go screw yourself. And if it's 5 stars, then I love you and I want to kiss your feet. And I'll pump you up like LeVar Ball pumps up his kids. So if you're into that, please go ahead and do so. And I would highly consider, never going to push this on you, but I would highly consider subscribing to the podcast if you haven't done so already. So
not going to push you to do it, but
not going to push you to do it. Just the same way that people didn't push LiAngelo Ball to steal, he just did that himself. So if you would like a pair of Louis Vuitton sunglasses, I'm not going to provide them, but you can go ahead and give us a review for it and subscribe. So thank you so much, Brain. I appreciate you being on the pod. I really enjoyed the little topics, and tune in next week.
Thank you for having me on. Appreciate it.